Hi, everyone, and welcome to China EVs and More, where my co-host Li Xiang and I will go over the week's most important and interesting news coming out of the China EV, AV, and mobility sectors. What Lei and I discussed today is based on our opinions and should not be taken as investment advice. For those that are new to the show, welcome. And to our loyal listeners, welcome back. We ask that you please help us get the word out to other enthusiasts, and of course, tune in again next week. My name is Tu Li. I'm the managing director at Sino Auto Insights, a global management consultancy that helps organizations bring innovative and tech-focused products and services to the transportation and mobility sectors. I write a free weekly newsletter that we pull many of our discussion topics from. You can sign up for it at sinoautoinsights.com, which of course I encourage you all to do. Lei, good morning. Can you please introduce yourself?
Good evening from Beijing. This is your co-host Li Xiang, former chief editor of China Auto Review. And this is episode number 122. So TGIF, and we're right at the halfway point in 2023. And am I at my 10th day in Beijing already?
Already?
Yes. Finally, I think getting into a groove of things in China, things in Beijing specifically, and starting to cross...
Kairoma?
Oh, man. You're in Detroit now, right?
In Detroit.
Where the air quality is pretty bad, I assume?
It's about 160, 170 today. Yeah, for those that aren't familiar with AQI, a normal day in the United States on a good day, probably less than 30 AQI. And so 170 is pretty bad. Once you get into the over 200, 250, you can actually taste it a little bit in your mouth.
Both of us got a taste of the Canadian fire. Yeah, so I've been here 10 days, and there's only one day, the day that it rained, I think June 28th, when Neil delivered the ESA. That was the only day when temperature was below 30 Celsius. Every other day has been like today, like 38, 39, near 40.
The pollution's been pretty good, though?
Yeah, the pollution hasn't been that bad, and it's in the hundreds, so sometimes in the double digits. So,
okay.
Nothing to complain. So I'm starting to cross off some items off the bucket list. So I was at a Guoan game last night. They played real bad, but they were playing the top team. So at the new govt. So I talked about that a few episodes ago. So I got that crossed off the bucket list.
So let me ask you, are they still like swearing, like shabi and all that stuff?
Big time. So equivalent of, so it's called the Jingma, which means the Beijing swearing. For those that don't live in Beijing or don't watch China football, they don't know what we're talking about. But yeah, it's when you're in the stadium, that makes it's an interesting environment. So yeah,
my kids, I think they can handle it now, but just 2 years ago they were young, so I didn't really want to take them to the games because there is just all swearing.
Yeah, I took my daughter to the game, so she, besides the swearing, I mean, I think she's old enough to understand, but she wanted to stay more than me and my wife, so she loved the environment, and that was great. And the other, I've checked out the new Neil house today. Just what I've been doing in Beijing is just to go and visit these stores and talk to the sales associates. Something I wasn't able to do all this time that we've been doing the show, and really to get a feel from their mouth of what's going on. I went to the Tesla showroom in Huamao, one of the earliest stores.
So near Wanda Plaza?
Yeah. So one of the ladies said, I was asking her, oh, it's, last day of the month, last day of the quarter. Should I, place an order? I guess you have some incentives going on. And she's like, no, I recommend you not to because... And then she kind of held off. So I'm expecting a announcement in due course.
We talked about this. We knew that there was going to be more than one price cut, right? So
yeah, it's either a price cut or a new version announcement. I think it's coming real soon, if not tomorrow, within the next few days, I think. Really the next move by Tesla. And then I checked out the battery swapping. It was actually on my way. I was, taking my daughter to a place. So I just saw it and I checked it out. It's the Alton, for taxi fleets. Actually pretty popular.
They're not as fancy as the Neo swapping stations. They're not as
fancy, but it works. And I was there for 10 minutes and there were 3 taxis, one after the other, pulling in and getting battery swapped and getting out. So,
and they're all BAIC?
Yeah, they're all BAIC. So, that was interesting to see. And then,
so for those folks, BAIC is Beijing Automotive. So
yeah. So they dominate the official taxi fleets with their EVs. And then the other day I got my license renewed and I had to go to this place, the main DMV, southeast corner of the 4th Ring Road.
Been there a couple times.
Yeah, which is not too far from Yizhuang or Beijing E-Town. So I drove down and just kind of see what that's where the testing of the robo-taxis are.
Yep.
And the Pony, a bunch of Baidus. I think there's like 600 running or something.
Yep.
And most of them have the safety driver. Some of them have the safety driver on the passenger seat. And I think there's 10 vehicles that are fully driverless. And Baidu and Pony are the first to get those licenses. So I saw some of those in action and yeah.
Yeah, so when I was there for the auto show, I got to ride in one with my friend Duncan. So
I'll have a chance next Friday. They're arranging me and I think another editor from Nikkei from Japan.
Nice.
So we'll be looking forward to that. So that's and just one thing I find fascinating is not only the number of different EVs, whatever any kind of brand that you can think of, but the what's the word?
Homogeneity?
Homogeneity, yes. Sometimes, I can't really tell because a lot of these EVs design-wise, they look the same.
Silhouette-wise.
Yeah, silhouette-wise. And then you go closer and okay, okay, this is this brand and this model. But, and just getting, used to life here, feels like I'm in the, back in the working in China mode, not vacationing, but yeah. So it's a great on the ground learning, seeing everything, which I missed, right?
Well, in summertime, normally all the foreigners leave for the summer. A lot of local Chinese that are, middle class, upper middle class, they'll also leave and go to the countryside or actually leave and go vacation. So summers are, fairly quiet in China. So here, I wrote in my newsletter that the last couple of days have reminded me of the days in Beijing where everything just kind of had this filter that it didn't seem crystal clear, right? And so, yeah, and, people are pretty concerned. Some are wearing masks. I think some are staying indoors, but I think you and I know that it's almost worse to be indoors because you want that wind, you want that breeze.
Yeah.
And it kind of sits in the house. And so this is those moments where I feel like we should have brought back 1 or 2 purifiers. But I'm hoping that it'll go away sooner rather than later, which doesn't seem like the case. But let's talk G6.
Yes, G6. Oh my God, it's one of those models, right?
It is such an important model for XPeng. Such an important model.
Pricing wise, right? Feature wise.
Super aggressive.
Super aggressive. And just, I want to point out, this is the G6. This is the only smart EV model in the renminbi 200,000 to 300,000 range with the driving range above 750 kilometers. CLTC, I believe. And this is the only model in that price range with the 800 volt silicon carbide.
Right.
And the only model with the XNGP akin to Tesla's FSD. So
which they do not offer in China.
Right. And also, I think what was important was very different from the G9 launch when they messed up with the SKUs. This time, they have 5 different versions, and it was very clearly, so they used the Pro Max to differentiate. And it's basically Pro has the single Orin X and X Pilot, whereas the Max has the dual Orin X chips. And
you're talking NVIDIA.
Yeah, and the XNGP and the 2 RoboSense LiDARs. So that's basically the difference. And then the other one is basically the battery difference. By the way, CALB, C-A-L-B, CALB is the sole battery supplier for the G6 because of the 800 volt architecture.
They are putting a lot of faith in CALB.
Yeah.
And they're almost the forgotten battery manufacturer because CATL, BYD, Goshen, at least in the West, have gotten so much publicity. CATL because of the partnerships with Ford and Tesla in the United States, BYD for their lack of making an announcement about entering North America, and then Goshen, obviously, with their partnership with Volkswagen and their factory that's in Western Michigan. So CALB is not a bit player, but they're much smaller. So a lot of faith.
CALB also had some lawsuits with CATL,
Yep.
right, I believe. So kind of a beef between the competitors. And so really making, for people trying to select different variants of G6, making it a little bit simple. There's really only 5 versions, but really the bulk of the sales is going to come from the middle 3 versions. So there's the top version, and then there's the 580 Pro, which is the 209,900, much lower starting price.
And for those that are wondering, the G6 is around the same footprint size as the Model Y.
Yeah, roughly.
It's, if you're wondering the size, it's a B class, I want to say, and it's more of a crossover than an SUV. So
right, it's clearly different than the G9, which is a SUV, more SUV type SUV. So, and I think He Xiaopeng, he made some comments. One is that it's going to be the best smart EV for the RMB 250,000 price range. Second, He said G6 is like the Apple iPhone 4 moment, because that was a step change that was using this new architecture, right?
Yep.
And then he said it's targeting at least 10,000 a month. And then they want to be the top selling model soon in that 250,000 RMB range.
Let me pose you this question. Like, you've been in Beijing for 10 days, you said. You see all of the B-class SUVs, crossovers on the streets. That is probably the most competitive market segment in China at around 250 and below, right? So
yeah,
10,000, I think G6 can do that for sure. But if it doesn't do at least 10,000, I don't think you can say anything except it's a failure or a disappointment.
Yeah, I think we had a similar discussion on the P5 when it was launched 2 years ago.
Right.
So let's hope the same does not happen to the G6, because this is a lot of expectations going into this model launching and starting deliveries soon, early next month. And then really the biggest selling point, I think, is this city NGP rollout, which is now available in 4 cities, and they're increasing to 50 cities by the end of this year and 200 in 2024. So right, when we talk about, to Brian Gu, and all he talked about was this smartification. So that's writing a lot, I think, on and then charging, right? The 800 volt architecture, 10 minutes charging, 300 kilometers, 19 minutes from 10% to 80% SOC. They've got 35,000 orders.
And I must say that XPeng, has reached out to, folks like us and some of the international community, car reviewers and things like that, so that are in China anyways. So they've made a concerted effort to put on a marketing blitz that I think is much more coordinated than the P5 was. I think they're starting to understand that a lot better.
Yeah.
You have to look at the success that Li Auto is having and
Yes.
point back to XPeng and Neo and say they have to be second guessing themselves from a focus on China market versus expand international. So I'm not saying that Neo and XPeng expanding internationally was a mistake, but the outcomes kind of bear that out a little bit, right?
Yeah. And I just thought, the XPeng learned a lesson from the G9 launch, and it was much more clear in terms of how the different variants, what happens, what kind of options or benefits that the existing owners have when they want to purchase this. It was much clearer.
Right.
And they probably learned a thing or two from Li Auto, because Li Auto uses Pro and Max and Air.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that's the homogeneity I was talking about too, not only in terms of how the car looks, but naming conventions.
Well, they're basically relating it to what Apple does. And so there's already, with the target consumer in China, there's already a familiarity with those, what's that? Trim levels, right?
Yeah, trim. And BYD does that. BYD has the Pro, has the Plus.
BYD is too much.
Yeah.
The Song has like 4 different versions, and it's confusing. So,
and going back to your mentioning of I've been here seeing on the road the type of vehicles, what I see on the road exactly reflects the BATL, because I see mostly Teslas, I see mostly BYDs, I see mostly Ions, and a bunch of Li Autos, some Xpengs, a lot of Neos, but BYD is definitely every other car is a BYD.
The funny thing about Neo is that you go to Beijing, you go to Shanghai, Shenzhen to a lesser extent, I think, but you go to the tier ones, you see enough Neos. It's just that they haven't really penetrated or resonated into the lower tier cities, and the sales have reflected that. So
yeah, and also that the incentives and the marketing campaign, national of focusing on the rural areas, it's also pointing to the fact that I think maybe you said this last episode that we're seeing some saturation in the bigger cities, and that's why they want to drive this NEV push down to the rural, lower tier cities. Yeah, but
I think the other important thing too is always remember, at least over the next few months, and keep track of what's going on with the overall economy in China, because there are still a lot of concerns that the overall economy is weak. And so this puts a lot of pressure on pricing, on features. So the price war is going to continue as long as the economy is still struggling a bit or still not as robust as in the past. And that's really, really going to increase the pressure to export if you're struggling. And one of my posts in the newsletter this week was one of the market research firms had forecasted that NEV take rate for exports in Europe is going to be 9% from the Chinese brands. That's growing from 6% in 2022. So it could be even more than 9% if the Chinese economy isn't able to really, really get ratcheted back up into growth mode. So,
speaking of the Chinese economy, what I feel is happening is out on the streets, I just see a lot of people working really hard. There's a lot more Kuwaiti people, just people, making a life, different jobs, different professions, that people are working hard. And maybe when we talk about this buying consumption downgrade, what's reflected in the EV market maybe is some of these people, when they had the purchasing power to buy, let's say, the Porsches or the higher priced premiums, they're now buying the Li Autos. And that's part of the consumption downgrade, I think,
Right.
which is a blessing in disguise for the Li Autos, for these smart EV premium startups.
And the fact of the matter is that the Neos and the Li Autos, the XPengs, the BYDs, they're offering products that people want to buy at the end of the day. And that didn't happen 5, 6, 7 years ago, not with the ICEs anyways. So
yeah, also really, so I visited the Denza, a couple of Neo stores, Tesla. Everywhere I went, those stores I went, the salespeople, the guys or the ladies, they're very patient. They love to talk to you. They love to add your WeChat and say, when you want to do a test drive.
你找我?
Yeah, I mean, it's like love talking to them, and I just explain, I've been away for 3.5 years, and it's amazing to see this dynamic and just trying to learn, and they're very patient. So really, it's.
So now, and I don't want to beat a dead horse, but now you see why I started the newsletter. Now you see why I wanted to create this podcast with you, right? Because
yeah,
it is such a dynamic and fierce and innovative and competitive market in China, and it's leading the world.
Yeah.
And it's not because of nationalism. It's not because of protectionism. It's because there are a lot of choices at a very affordable price. I'll give you for instance, the Zeekr X, which is going to be less than 30,000 US dollars in China, is going to be sold for 50,000 euro in Europe. So that's not cheap. So,
but it could still be competitive.
Yes,
because of the lack of
real
offerings,
products,
right?
Yeah, but I will say this, Lei, at 210,000 RMB versus 189,000 RMB, I might upgrade to the G6 from the Zeekr X. So I think the Zeekr X is nice. It's a little smaller than the G6, but
so I'm thinking that the 755 Max, which is I think slightly over 250,000 RMB, is a great deal.
Yep,
because it's got the XNGP, it's got the range. I think even the 580 Max, because I don't know, 580 kilometers, that's more than enough. And you still get the XNGP.
Let me set the table a little bit, because Brian Gu has been interviewed, and he said this during our sit down with him. He said that he foresees long-term about 10, 11 global brands that are each selling at a floor of 3 million units.
Yeah.
So when you're thinking XPeng, think about that. The target is 3 million before 2030, probably, in order for XPeng to be a global player. Okay, he said global. He didn't say Chinese. So that means that XPeng is probably selling 20, 30, 40% of their, maybe 30% of their sales internationally by 2030. Okay.
Which is the difficult part of really, if you want to be in global, let's say Chinese brands becoming the next Hyundai or Kia, let's say in the US, that's going to take a while. Let's forget about this China-US relations. Let's say that's not a factor, but still, right?
So this is the thing, Lei. If we say that each region, each country has a national champion, the US, whether it's GM or Ford, let's say one of the 10, right, is a US company. One of the 10 is a German. One of the 10 is a French. One of the 10 is, then there's only room for 3 or 4 more, right? And how many will come from China? I believe maybe a handful will resonate globally outside of China. And so part of that is going to be being able to outlast this price war, because the price war is going to weaken everyone.
Yeah, which Li Xiang talked about extensively in that long letter he posted on the 8-year anniversary, right? About really
happy birthday, Li Auto.
Yeah, being efficient, being able to offer this cost, but at the same time bringing the maximum value at the lowest cost to the OEM, but also to the consumer and maximum value. So
let me add, Lei, that this is where putting your car hat or automotive hat back on makes a ton of sense, because the number of SKUs, the complexity of the manufacturing, and being able to market your products very simply and having the messaging resonate, that's an automotive thing now. So now they're learning how to be car guys, more like car guys on the operational efficiency. They're trying to be more like Toyota. They're trying to be more like Tesla, because on the front end, the feature side, they're much more technologically savvy. They're much more pushing into connected. And Brian Gu said it, the smartification, right? Because the first phase was the electrification. Now it's the smartification, at least in the China market. We still have 3, 4, 5 years before the smartification will hit Europe in any significant way, and then the United States as well. But by 2030, we should see the large OEMs offer some sort of mobility platform, is what I foresee. So
I think the G6 in itself is this architecture cost efficiency play that probably Li Auto talks about, and what can be expanded or branched out from this architecture. So I think the G6 is a great launch, pricing wise, product wise, but XPeng is going to need a lot more G6s to continue to kind of like what Li Auto has achieved. 9, 8, 7, getting past the 30,000 delivery milestone, right?
Rumor is they got 32,000 in June. So
yeah, well, Li Xiang, he said it in the letter that they did over 32,000. So
congratulations. That's a huge milestone, I think.
Yeah.
It's taken four products, right? So
yeah, three products. Well, plus the one. So one alone did 200,000 units. So, and then he's sticking with that 1.6 million by 2025.
That's a massive number, right? That's a massive number.
Yeah, which basically means doubling of sales every year in the next 2 years.
And for those that don't follow the automotive sector that closely, that means not only increasing demand for current products, launching new products that have significant demand, but also building out a service sector, a customer service, not a sector, but a customer service competency to support that 1.6 million. So the level of complexity to get to 1.6 million is not just a buy-sell thing from a customer standpoint. It's also being able to build out your charging infrastructure. It's also dependent on all these other factors, because they're going to be at almost they say 300,000 this year, right?
Yeah.
Secretly, they're targeting 400,000.
Well, Li Xiang, he denied it, but it could be smoke.
But in 2 years, well, that was a trial balloon, right? They're like, oh yeah, 400,000. Yeah. In 2 years, they want to quadruple that to 1.6, right?
So
that's like Tesla early days of the Model 3, Model Y growth.
Yeah.
2 consecutive years of like more than 100% growth. So very interesting times.
So we're good with G6. Yeah. And I think just as, like I said.
You're going to go down to GZ and check it out?
No, hopefully I get something in Beijing.
Oh, okay.
That I don't have to.
Man, get out. Stretch your legs. Go down to GZ, man.
Actually, in Beijing, the OTA hasn't happened yet for the City NGP. They said it's available, but you still need to update it, right? But like we need another G6 in order to keep this momentum, because you can't have one model flop, or two. P5 kind of flopped, and G9, right? So,
and remember that the G9 was never going to be one of their high runners because of the price.
And now with the G6, you wonder how much of the cannibalization of G9 is going to be, because G9 is in a price in the higher 200,000 to low 300,000. So
yeah. I think the pricing is okay from a separation, but the competition in between the 209,000 to the 350,000 outside of XPeng products is also pretty fierce. So,
and remember, Li Auto is coming out with their BEVs and lower priced EREVs as well, maybe the 6 or the 5, that are going to have the exact same. Li Auto is doing NOA media test drive the last few days, which is similar to the XNGP. And remember, Li Auto, they're 1.6 million.
But it's Miafei, right?
Yeah. And 1.6 million is models above 200,000 RMB. So they're going to get into the XPeng territory pretty soon. No time to rest, I'm telling you. Yeah.
So the breadth of products from NIO, Li Auto, and BYD, they're going to overlap significantly once NIO launches the Alps brand and BYD starts delivering on the Yangwang and starts delivering on the F brand. So we're looking at what traditional automakers have kind of done, like a GM that had the Pontiac, Chevrolet, Buick, and then Cadillac, with Volkswagen, with Skoda.
Yeah, this multi-brand play.
Yeah. And so they might, the Chinese consumer, as they gain stature, as they gain salary, they might move into from a BYD to a F brand to finally in a Yangwang, but they stay with the BYD brand. That's the whole vertical integration of branding, traditionally known in the automotive space. And Volkswagen has 8-9 brands that you can kind of move into. I think there's probably a sweet spot, 3-4 brands maybe at the most, especially as the Chinese EV companies, they might have export-only brands as well. So
I think this is an evolution, which in the long run, like I said, you're going to see brands shrink, not expand.
Right.
In the long run.
I think so too. I think it's way too difficult nowadays to have 8 or 10 brands that you're trying to manage, because what we're seeing with Volkswagen Group to a lesser extent is too many mouths to feed from a investment in branding and technology and innovation standpoint. So speaking of Volkswagen Group, Lei, what are your thoughts on Duisman getting got?
It's the last of the D's disciples or something.
Yeah.
House cleaning, whatever. And now it's Bluma's disciples, I guess, or lieutenants. Because you have Peter Bosch from Bentley now running CARIAD. And Bentley, remember, is part of the Volkswagen premium group, or right, which Bluma headed. And now you have the new Audi CEO, which was at Porsche, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so somebody had to go.
I'm pretty certain that a lot of that had to do with the struggles that Audi has in China.
Oh yeah, big time. Not only in China, but globally.
But unfortunately, and you and I have a friend in the group company. We were hoping for an external leadership change, but he brought in another car guy. I think that's a mistake.
Well, he's a product planning guy. So I heard somewhere that within Volkswagen Group, there's these different tiers of, let's say, respect. And I hear that the product planning guys are on the top, let's say. So hopefully this will work out.
But man, Satya Nadella said people only respect innovation. So I'm going to say this. I wrote in my newsletter right before the announcement dropped publicly, I wrote, the panic button should have been pressed a couple of years ago. Now it's time for management changes. So I'll take a little credit for that. But because Duisman was talking, we're going to shrink our product production or product planning cycle from 48 months to 30 months. 30 months is still too long.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, for the China market anyways. So, but let's move on to Qi Yuan. Is it Qi Yuan or Qi Yuan?
So, by the way, Chang'an is right at this moment. I think they just did a delivery event of the new S7, which I tweeted. I saw one on the street. The Deepal S7. I think it's a
Shenlan for everyone else.
No, it's a BEV. It's a BEV because it's got that plate that says 纯电, which means BEV. I think they did a delivery event tonight. I don't know, 1,000 vehicles. Something. It couldn't have been 10,000. It was like 1,000 vehicle delivery event or something. And then this Qiyuan is like I don't know if it's a brand, but it's supposed to be a series of new EVs that Chang'an had announced or mentioned in one of their like strategy updates a few months ago. It's got a new logo, right? But clearly it's the sedan, which is the Model 3 X1 P7, that segment, trying to compete.
So you know that Chang'an is trying to be a player. So they're coming strong. They got 3 brands now. Shenlan. They have Qiyuan and the third one. What's the third one?
Avatar, and many other.
The Avatar is building excitement for sure, right?
Yeah.
And I'd written in this week's newsletter that Ford must be feeling a bit of a cold shoulder because Chang'an is Ford's JV partner. And the only thing they have to show for that is a not selling very well Mustang Mach-E. So
yeah, I would put Chang'an kind of like, if we talk about the centrally administered, so FAW, Dongfeng, as Chang'an, they're the 3, but SAIC is the largest automaker. I would say there's a bit of rivalry between Chang'an and GAC because GAC earlier this week they announced a flying car or eVTOL, right?
Yeah.
And then a fuel cell MPV.
You know, it is amazing to see because what most Western folks probably are just below the radar or the SOEs and some of the products and some of the brands that they have. You and I obviously live this stuff every day, so it doesn't surprise us. But the stodgy SOEs are really, really pushing the envelope on some of the products, some of the brands.
Yeah.
With Chang'an, it's with the help of Huawei, by the way. I think all 3 of their EV or new energy vehicle brands are using Huawei software, hardware stacks, I believe, right?
Yeah, definitely Avatar, because Avatar is a Huawei CATL kind of joint play.
But this is where you and I talk about new brands, new products almost on a weekly basis. And this is where we point to how crowded and overcrowded things are.
Yeah.
It's just hard to get any sustained sales and growth because there's always something new coming out.
Yeah, even for you and me, the fanatics, even for me, being here 10 days, and I sometimes I'm quite busy doing family matter, and I don't follow every news every hour every day, and I see on the streets some new car or new brand, and I'm like, oh, this is what this is. I'm still learning. Right, that's how crazy it is.
Let's be honest, Lei. We cheat because we help each other, right? You and I, because it is overwhelming. When I was there, it was just really hard to keep up.
Yeah,
and so this is my cheat sheet, talking to you on a weekly basis, and kind of you helping me on the Chinese side for some of the stuff that I'll miss. But it is not easy to keep up with it, and most people can't, if I'm being honest. And this is where I'm going to kind of rant here. I'm going to vent a little bit. And this is where some of the media are a little bit lazy because they're going to people that might have had an understanding of the China market 10, 12, 15 years ago, but have no idea what's going on outside of what BYD and not even Tesla. These people don't understand what they're doing, what Tesla's doing in China, yet they get a lot of airtime, which is kind of disappointing to me. But
yeah, that's why I say, for me, I'm really appreciative of the opportunity I have and of being here. And rather than talking to some of the PR people, I just go to these stores and get a feel from people working there, right? Sometimes you find out different things.
The PR people are great, but they're not able to answer the questions that you and I would ask them, right? So,
or whatever is published publicly, right?
Yeah. And that's not their job, so it's fine. But
yeah, so I think for you and I, who you've been here before, for quite during the pandemic, and now I'm here for a few months. Just really lucky to and a lot of people can't do that. I mean, even for the Western media that are not being able to be on the ground.
So, Lei, we are at 9:50. Let's open the room up.
Oh, shoot.
Right now.
Time flies, man.
Anyone who has any questions, comments, I see the person that had raised his hand earlier is not on the in the room anymore. So count Volvo, Polestar as 2 companies that have also now confirmed that they will be moving over to the NACS plug. that
Volkswagen.
Tesla popularized, right? Has Volkswagen confirmed, or they said they're kicking the tires, right?
Well, I think it's pretty much no-brainer. If Electrify America
is looking to standardize it, right? So
yeah, and many more. I think many more, because the more comes on board, then the rest of the pack will kind of feel left out. And if you right, it's kind of that network effect, right?
The other things that I wanted to talk about. Oh, so New York City is rolling out a congestion tax. I think that's worthy of note. So it's going to get more expensive for private passenger vehicles to drive into city center. We're talking Manhattan.
Oh, speaking of that, I have a good example. So I'm staying at this apartment from my wife's friend, and she helped us get a parking pass for 80 renminbi a month. 80 renminbi a month. And this is one of the older residential areas.
That's like $12. $13.
Yeah, which do not have a underground parking. So the other day I came home late, like really late, like almost near midnight, and I couldn't find a parking space. So I had to get out and park at a public parking, and it cost me 82 renminbi that night. More than what I paid the whole month. Oh, that's how crazy it is.
Yeah. Well, you must be in an old complex that doesn't have.
older complex. So,
and when we say older, it can't be more than 30 years old, basically.
Yeah.
So, Lei, that's all I had today on my side. Anything else you want to talk about?
No. I'm good. I think that
you need to keep an eye out for the song L's. I want to see what they look like in production form. They won't be out for another couple of months, but
the song L's. Yeah. Yes.
You know the almost production concept at Shanghai Auto. I liked a lot. So
yeah, it was one of the better or models that we said was one of the highlight models.
And it's 300,000, so it's going to be one of the most expensive for BYD too. So. Oh, geez. Okay, cool, guys. Hey, everyone, thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We will talk with everyone next week.
Yeah, talk to you guys next week. Bye-bye.
That brings us to the end of this week's show. Lei and I thank you for tuning in. My name is Tu Li, and you can find me on Twitter at Sino Auto Insight. That's SinoAutoInsight. You can find Lei on Twitter at LeiXing77. That's LEIXING77. If you wouldn't mind rating and or reviewing us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you grab your podcast from, we'd appreciate that as well. Even better, if you enjoy this show, please tell your friends about it. Please join us again next week as we track down all the latest news on China, EVs, and more.